To call for wage rises.
Livestock and Grain Producers Executive Member Ian Steele-Park says farmers should welcome last night's budget. While he laments it didn't tackle the wages issue, he says it does show the government has paid attention to the demands of the rural sector for something to be done to bring the deficit under control.
We certainly accept what this federal Labor government has done, something which I've never expected Labor governments to do at all. Obviously it's been forced upon them, not only by what we've been saying, but by the obvious state of the economy. So to that extent, we are satisfied that they have at last got the message.
Mr Steele-Park was at Gunnedah today for the second day of AgQuip, the largest machinery field days in Australia, a 3-day event that has drawn more than 300 exhibitors and by its close tomorrow more than 100,000 people. Literally a farm machinery supermarket, it features the latest in farm equipment, from the smaller toys for smaller boys to the massive tractors for the older and better-heeled cocky. Machinery dealer John McNeil says he thought the budget was fair and the majority of the measures taken by Treasurer Keating necessary to keep the economy afloat. Now he's hoping the budget will lead to a re-strengthening of the Australian dollar. As most heavy machinery is imported from America, the current low exchange rate may force hefty price rises onto already struggling farmers.
If our dollar starts to creep up a bit, we're not going to have the huge price hikes passed on that are really a fact of life. Otherwise, about October, November, the stocks that have been in Australia for over 12 months have dwindled. We'll start to run out of them, and then there would be massive price hikes going. I would think it would be fair to say in the order of 15 to 20% on a major item like a combine harvester or a large tractor.
It was only the dedicated service who braved the chilly waters today, but the beaches are expected to become more populated when the school holidays begin and the weather hopefully warms up. With this in mind, the council is beginning its beach patrols tomorrow at Stockton, Nobbies, Newcastle, Bar, Dixon and Merriweather beaches. After the recent heavy weather, the maintenance work on the city's 2 ocean baths has been delayed, and Town Clerk Barry Lewis says it probably won't be completed until late next week. Council pool inspectors were also getting ready for tomorrow's opening by brushing up on their life-saving techniques. The pools at Beresfield, Wallsend, Stockton, Lambton and Mayfield will be open every day throughout the summer season from 6 a.m. until 6 in the evening.
The mural brightens a playground at the combined Hillsborough Public and Glendon Special Schools and is the work of 12 Year 11 students from Cardiff High. However, it was more than simply an art lesson for the students. It was their chance to help 30 mentally and physically handicapped children who attend the school. The mural took 3 months to complete, and at today's official unveiling, everybody was obviously pleased with the result.
It's been very successful as far as I'm concerned. Not so much the finished product, that's about 1/10 of what the whole thing has been worth to me. What I'm more interested in is the way that my students have worked together.
But this was a special day for all school students, not just because it was the last day of second term, but because this is the last year where there will be only 3 terms. From next year, the winter months will be split into 2 terms, meaning that parents will have to entertain their children during 4 holidays instead of 3.
The Helicruise aircraft was hired by shipping agents Patrick's to deliver 44-gallon drums of lubrication oil from the Hannell Street Wickham heliport to a client ship several kilometres out to sea. The Indian-registered Rattler Deep left port yesterday bound for Sweden with 70,000 tonnes of coal on board. However, the ship had left the port without the necessary lubrication oil, and rather than turn back, the helicopter came to the rescue. More than 20 drums were transferred, 2 at a time. The practice has been widespread overseas for many years. Bringing ships into port for supplies is time-consuming and expensive, while helicopters are relatively cheap. After today's successful operation, helicopter deliveries from Newcastle may be used more often in future.
Well, the town was laid out in 1904 in the first organised competition of rugby league in 1911, which Curry won.
Right,
Initially,
good way to start.
Was a good way.
And 10 internationals of rugby league standing is a record for any club in Australia.
I think it is a record in Australia, and we're pretty proud of it in Curry.
Would you like to single one out and say he was the standout of your 10?
Big Eddie Lumsden, of course. He wore the Australian jumper on 42 occasions and played in 15 tests. Scored 32 tries in international football. I think that just speaks for itself.
Sure, and you've had an Australian captain, of course, in John Sattler as well.
Johnny Sattler, because he's not far behind. He's captain Australia in 3 tests, and much more. You can't do much more in football than captain your own country.
Cannot. If we go through them very quickly, Mick Shields started the ball rolling with the tour of New Zealand in 1935. And of course Noel White, who played 1 test and was a real speedster, I believe.
That's right. He was the fastest footballer in Australia. Apparently, at that time they used to hold sprint championships, and he actually was the fastest footballer in Australia.
One of them was a Welsh international and a real star from Curry, Dennis Booker, I believe.
Dennis Booker, a real star. Played against Australia. Played for Wales because he was born in Wales. Never got the chance to represent Australia because he went over to England, around about the time he could have represented. And he played against Australia, France, England, and he played against other nationalities as an international.
And of course the 2 brothers, Jack and Eddie Lumsden, we've mentioned Eddie. Rhys Duncan Jr., of course his father, everyone says should have played for Australia. He is probably your best known player.
I'd say so. He's a legend in Curry, Rhys Duncan, he always has been. I think everybody knows him from young kiddies right down to the oldies. They all know old Rhys.
Right. Gary Sullivan, Bill Hamilton, of course.
Yeah, Gary played in the World Cup series. And Bill Hamilton toured with the Kangaroos.
And of course the last one, Star Masterman, Jeffrey
Masterman. Yeah, Starry played in the 2 tests against France. And
can it continue?
Oh, I think it can, Lou.
You're still breeding footballers up here, aren't you?
Oh, I don't think we'll ever stop.
This display of yours, Jim, is really a history of the game in Curry, and I believe you're putting a book together along those lines too.
I hope to, Lou, to have it out in the bicentenary year.
The driver of this small yellow dump truck was loading soil at the top of Queen's Road when the handbrake cable snapped. The truck, with the driver in pursuit, ran down the street, careering through one front yard, running into a fence, and finally coming to rest against this car. Police say it was lucky the driver missed the houses and no one was injured. However, the driver suffered some cuts and bruises as he tried to jump back in the truck as it rolled down the street.
Newcastle couldn't have hoped for a better day or a better parade. With over 90 entrants, this was one of the biggest Matara parades for some years. And for more than an hour, Hunter Street from Pacific Park to Civic Park was lined with crowds of people who waved to and cheered the stream of floats, bands and displays. Greg Haywood, fresh from the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh, acted as Grand Marshal. He was followed by the Newcastle RSL Pipe Band, who set the pace for the rest of the entourage. One of the most colourful floats was that entered by Shortland County Council, but perhaps the most popular was this foot-stomping, eye-catching entry by the Texas Ranch and Restaurant. This year the parade had a strong street theatre flavour. Community theatre and peace groups have obviously worked hard over the past months, creating an exciting array of masks, costumes and banners which brightened the parade. Spectators were entertained by clowns and creatures, and this well-dressed gentleman who seemed to enjoy his leisurely Saturday afternoon ride on his penny farthing bicycle. The Matara organisers were delighted with the success of the 1986 parade. They're now hoping for a similar turnout for the fireworks party at the International Sports Ground tonight, and again for the penny farthing picnic in King Edward Park tomorrow.
There will also be dancing, refreshments and festivities.
Two years ago, when Telecom began taking telephone applications over the phone, it also became a member of the Credit Reference Association. Who can the association get information on?
Well, virtually anybody that's applied for credit in the past, particularly members of the Credit Reference Association, and we find that they're finance companies, large department stores, car yards that handle hire purchase agreements, and that's where we get our information from.
The association provides Telecom with information about an applicant's ability to pay bills with any of its member organisations. If there's a history of outstanding debts, Telecom can charge an additional fee when connecting the phone of up to $200 because of the risk involved. Telecom says the association has the backing of the New South Wales Privacy Committee, but also says an applicant is not informed when they ring Telecom that they'll be checked through the association.
Not normally we don't, because we find that most people we don't have any trouble with.
Is it possible that the application could be processed and the phone connected before the results from the association come through?
It can, and that's one of the things we're looking at the moment.
So a person could be hit for a bill for an extra $150 to $200 without any warning?
They could be, that's correct.
What if they can't pay that bill?
We'll talk to them about it. Each case on its merits. I'm not going to say that we're hard and fast in our rules. Our bylaws allow us some fairly discretionary type powers, and we'll talk to people about it if they have that problem.
But they could just lose the money that they've expended?
They could, yes.
Sellotape together.
The ingredients for this special musical score are a blank sheet of paper in a public place, some pen and ink, and some fertile minds. The result, a concerto which can only be described as one of a kind.
The first page has obviously been done by someone who knows what they're doing. There's some more childlike music.
And it's not all music, there is some spoken word.
There's some stuff now. Here, for instance, in this bar, this is the 7th bar, the orchestra are instructed to stand and smile at the audience.
For how long?
For 5 seconds. Some of them, though, while smiling, have to be playing at the same time. This is going to be particularly difficult for the wind and brass players, I would imagine.
Is this serious music?
It can be. It certainly can be. It depends how it's performed. There are a lot of pieces of music written in this fashion where randomness plays a role of some sort. For instance, here we have some newspaper clippings. Somebody's pasted them in. The players will read those. That's not the first time that's been done. That's a fairly common thing in avant-garde music.
After the premiere performance in the Mackey Hall this afternoon, the crowd demanded an encore. Either they liked what they heard, or they wanted to hear it again because they couldn't believe their ears.
Number 26, the City of Newcastle Squadron and armed personnel from Base Squadron at Williamtown marched along Hunter Street, through the mall and on to Civic Park. In Memorial Grove, they regroup for a commemorative service, along with members of the Air Force Association. The annual ceremony, which was held today throughout Australia, marks the anniversary of the Battle of Britain. Fought 46 years ago, it was the turning point for Britain in World War II, when Germany stopped bombing British airfields to concentrate on London, a strategy which Britain used to regroup and strengthen its air forces. Following an address by Wing Commander Ron McGrath, the Williamtown Base Operations Officer, wreaths were laid in memory of those who lost their lives.
In the rounds, it was one win apiece, Lakes by 12 points in the first and a narrow 2-point margin to the Lions in the second. Lakes captain coach Rip Taylor was sent off that day after just 7 minutes. Despite that information, Souths can win it, although Lakes will go in hot favourite. The teams are predictable, with South Newcastle all fit and well, and Taylor naturally included in the Seagulls team. That inclusion is controversial, as he was expected to miss the game due to suspension. But his club got him off in an amazing twist by the Rugby League. The match, of course, will be won in the forwards, as all grand finals are.
With the horses that are in the field, there's every likelihood that we could repeat that finish because there's only one way to describe the NBN Cameron field as being a super field of runners.
Brian, this is a super race too now because it is a lead to the Epsom, your prize money's up, and the field is including a lot of good horses.
Yes, there are quality horses right through the field. And when you look at the likes of Riverdale, which some people would term a champion, which is not a term you use lightly, Chanticleer, a New Zealand runner this year in Amber Man, and of course the two horses that fought out the Carlton Newmarket in May, Count Bebic and Kiwi Kong, March Akita and Sound of Bells and Vain Fury from Newcastle. So an excellent field of sprinters.
A total field of?
Well, a total field of 17 and 3 emergencies, and probably there's a story in that, Lee. When you consider a horse of the quality of Senshire as the first emergency and couldn't make it into the field, it's some indication of the quality of the field in the NBN Cameron.
Riverdale will start favourite, they say, at this early stage?
Well, he's got some controversy about him at the moment, but that aside, he's a favourite with the crowd. He's a beautiful looking racehorse. The way he races is a crowd pleaser. Should probably see him start favourite, yes.
And a bit of a local anyway from Gosford.
Well, he's not far away, is he?
He's not. What about the Winfield Cup? Another field of class horses, I believe.
Yes, well again, we've got a full field in that race, so full fields in both our feature races for this carnival, and also again, we've got the opportunity to produce a winner that can go on and do something in the years ahead, or in particular the spring carnivals ahead in Sydney and in Melbourne. And the race does suit 4-year-olds, and there's a nice group of 4-year-olds as well as some proven stayers in the event.
And it has been classed as a lead-in for even such things as the Caulfield and Melbourne Cups, hasn't it?
Well, we're proud of our record. Since, early in the 1980s, we've had 2 Melbourne Cup winners and 2 Melbourne Cup favourites have won our race here in Newcastle. So there's very few cups throughout Australia who could boast that recognition.
When the Botello family ducked out to their front yard on Wednesday afternoon, they couldn't believe their eyes. A family of wood ducks, mum, dad and 11 tiny ducklings, had taken up residence in their swimming pool. As the front yard is surrounded by a substantial wall, broken only by 2 gates, the Botellos suspected foul play, but still went out of their way to make the new arrivals welcome. Throughout the week, the wild duck showed no signs of budging.
tentatively making friends with their adoptive family and accepting with good grace the offer of food. Their apparent willingness to stay thrilled Wilbur the wayward Cocker Spaniel, gave Harry the Basset Hound a real boost, and even caught the attention of their feline friend Tina, who is expecting her own brood any day now and is much too preoccupied to bother the quiet pool crashers. Although uninvited guests, the Botello family say the ducks now have a home for as long as they choose to stay, or at least until it's hot enough to go swimming.
Hello, I'm Jane Button. National Aboriginal Week got underway in the Hunter today with several flag-raising ceremonies and a march through the city.
Join Creighton and the Reynolds of the